Okay, this is Dancing at the Louvre from the series, the French Collection, Part 1, Number 1. It's by an American artist named Faith Ringgold. This was done in 1991, so it's really pretty recent. I don't know if any of you were alive then, but getting close to it at least. Acrylic on canvas, tie-dyed, pieced fabric border. But if you look at it, you can see, well, it kind of looks like a quilt, and that is what it is supposed to look like. It's not a traditional quilt, but it's certainly taking on quilt making in the form of the piece. A little bit about Faith Ringgold. She, as I mentioned, I think, is an American. She was educated at the City College of New York. She grew up in Harlem. Her mother was named Willie Posey. You don't necessarily need to know that, but her mother was a fashion designer and dressmaker, and so she got obviously a certain amount of sewing technique from her mother. And her work does use that traditional quilt making, as I mentioned. The themes that she looks at in her work are things like marriage, love, motherhood, religion, death, etc., but more specifically things related to Black women's lives. This particular quilt is part of a 12-story quilt saga, and it deals with Ringgold's alter ego named Willa Marie Simone. Willa Marie Simone, who is a 16-year-old Black girl who has, according to the quilt itself, the quilts themselves, because they do have writing on them, quote, escaped the cotton fields of Georgia and the side streets of Harlem in the 20s. And she lives in Paris as an artist and a model. And so this series details her adventures throughout Paris. You know, she has dinner with Gertrude Stein and hangs out with Richard Wright and James Baldwin and Langston Hughes. She paints Josephine Baker. So she has all these really fantastic adventures that would have maybe been possible back in the 20s, but of course these are made-up adventures. You notice that it is paint on quilt, so it's not just strictly traditional. So she does paint on fabric, but then she uses traditional quilting techniques. You can see here with the lines, with the seaming. She does have the battening, I think it's what it's called, in the back to give it some quiltiness, some warmth. So she does use these kind of traditional ancestral sewing techniques, but she also relies on a lot of modernist art from France in particular, and you'll see in a slide or so what I'm talking about. She also, as I mentioned, writes, and I don't think you can see it here, but it is here, but you can't see it. She writes on the borders about what's happening in the image. So that might remind you a little bit about the migration of the Negro, because with those long titles that those pieces had. But of course, this is not nearly as difficult a subject, because this is all fantasy. This is all kind of the wonderful adventures of this girl. The character of Willa Marie Simone is kind of amalgam of her mother, as I mentioned before, who was a fashion designer, and herself, because Faith Ringgold was herself, meaning Faith Ringgold. She was an artist, ardent feminist, still is, and a political activist. So what else did I want to say about that? This is in part, the piece is about, you've got people, of African descent who are originally from America in the Louvre. Shoot, that was not supposed to happen. Hold on for 1 second. In the Louvre, and claiming it as their own and dancing in it. Now, of course, I would not recommend dancing in a museum, but you can see that there's a certain comfort level there, which is really fantastic, which probably wouldn't be very common in the 20s. But there's a certain amount of claiming the art, claiming this, claiming a place in the world of art as her own. And this, of course, would be part of Ringgold's feminist interests, but not just feminist, just human, please. Everybody wants to be part of something. That's just silly. All right, here are a few of her other pieces. So we can see we have, this is obviously part from the French series. So we have a salon, people sitting around talking about smart things. Here we have one called In Picasso's Studio, and he's painting the ladies of Avignon, right? Here we have one that's placed in Harlem itself. So she didn't just do the French series; she has an American series as well. But you can see the writing a little more clearly here. I wanted to pull up her FAQ because she has a website that she maintains, and it's really cool. The thing about contemporary artists is that you can get in touch with them and you can talk to them. And she really is very open about her inspirations, and it's just a really neat thing to see. I wanted to show you a video. I'm not gonna make you click back on the PowerPoint to get the video. I'm just gonna play the video here and now. Okay, here it is. The video is important.
In 1970, part of what lots of women artists were doing.
I don't think you can hear that. Let me try this again. Hold on.